The Prix Galien is a welcome initiative to stimulate creative research and promote excellence. Barack Obama. The Galien Awards ceremony is considered the equivalent of the Oscars night for the innovators in the labs and awards every year the best pharmaceutical product, the best biotechnology product, the best medical technology, best digital health, best incubator accelerator, best startup.
This is the right event, on the right issue, at the right time.
I thank His Excellency, the President, for bringing Prix Galien to Africa, and I look forward to the day when we will celebrate an African winner of the Prix Galien.
I'm particularly grateful to receive this award.
The awards are among the highest honors in science and commerce because they lead to improvement in the human condition.
The Prix Galien Awards recognize the world's brightest minds and most innovative companies. They are a true celebration of the hard work required to produce life-changing interventions.
That is what makes us optimistic about the future.
Congratulations to all of you.
Make a difference. Join the Galien Foundation.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Gil Bash. I am privileged to be chair of the Galien Foundation Incubator, Accelerator, and Private Equity Award Program. This is the first year we've offered this award to enterprises around the world. It is a global award. Most of our awards are actually regional or country focused. This year, we decided to initiate this award, first time, and invite enterprises from around the world to participate. It's particularly special that we have this cohort on this call of 9 extraordinary institutions. You're going to get a chance to meet them. You're going to get a chance to hear what makes them so different. And you're going to get a chance to see and hear why their efforts are game-changing in advancing health innovation that can sustain and save lives all around the world. The 9 on this call and the group that will be on the following call that begins at 3:30 are truly exceptional. I want to give you some idea of the cohort that the committee of 6 outstanding industry leaders went through in order to determine who truly was worthy to be a Galien Foundation finalist. Around the world, there are more than 4,000 incubators and accelerators, not including private equity teams that focus on this sector. 4,000 enterprises that are seeking. They come from small groups, academic institutions, corporations, individuals who feel that they have wisdom and ideas to share. The group that we have here today that have been chosen as finalists are extraordinary. I would encourage all of you listening in to follow these enterprises on LinkedIn, look at their websites, follow the individuals on Twitter if they have Twitter handles and so forth, and learn more and more about them. Today, we have a very special opportunity to go inside these organizations, to learn what makes them special, and to understand what they are doing within their institution, their enterprise, to advance human health. We're going to understand their philosophy, their techniques, some of the enterprises that they're supporting, and some of the outcomes that they had to demonstrate in order to become a Galien Foundation finalist. I'm going to introduce them. I'm going to use my screen to introduce them to you. These are the representatives of these institutions. Their institutions are not small. Some of them are consortiums of enterprises. Some of them hail from academic institutions. Some of them are private equity groups that have been spun out of larger enterprises. Some of them are private equity groups that take a special TLC approach to supporting their portfolio companies. They're different. They're also global. Some of them are based in the United States. Some are in Germany. Some are in Israel. That's fascinating because their focus is not just on their country where they're headquartered. They're actually pursuing innovation in the hope that it can make an impact on human life all around the world. And we're going to find out what their approach is. How does an enterprise in one nation invest in an enterprise that may be present in another nation? These days, when we think about disease in itself, as one of the founders of Galien said, Professor, the late Elie Wiesel, who was really the honorary chair of the organization when it was founded initially in the United States, said something I will always remember. Disease is the great oppressor of humankind. Where the solutions come from, where the salvation comes from, is not necessarily important. That it comes and it's made available to help people who are suffering, who are seeking healing. That's what matters. These incubators, accelerators, and private equity groups are not just financial institutions. They actually are the conduit to healing. And so it's a privilege for me to introduce them and also to acknowledge them as Prix Galien finalists, one of the highest achievements anyone can receive in the life science sector. I'll be going on my screen, audience and participants, left to right by rows. I'll introduce you, and you don't have to say anything right now, but I do want you thinking about the first question. And the first question is going to be that I'm going to sort of kick off and ask two people. I'm going to start off asking this to Mati Gill and Mary Howard. The question I have is, why do you think you were selected as a Prix Galien finalist? And Sally Alon, I'm going to ask, or Elaine, I'm going to ask that you also give that question some thought, because you're going to be thinking about that as well. All of our panelists will have an opportunity to weigh in on these questions. So Mati Gill, we first met some years ago when you were with one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world, headquartered in Israel, Teva Pharmaceuticals, truly a global company. And you've had an incredible career with them. You were involved in computational biology. I believe that you're a lawyer. You have served with distinction protecting Israel in the military. You are a globalist. You are residing in Tel Aviv. Your focus is around the world. You're heading up as CEO Ion Labs. Ion Labs is a very interesting coalition of world leaders. I believe you have in the coalition supporters such as Pfizer, Amazon Web, AstraZeneca, Teva, Merck, and the Israeli biotech fund, IBF. That's quite a consortium. Thank you for joining us today. Our next panelist and finalist for the Prix Galien is Roy Wiesner. Roy is the managing director of Amun Velocity. It's a very special Amun fund. He is the managing director, as I mentioned. He is one of the heads of the deal team. So Amun is a major private equity fund headquartered in Israel, and if I'm not mistaken, also Boston today. So you have dual global locations. He's on the board of several of the portfolio companies where he's invested. He has 15 years of investment expertise. He was first actually an M&A and private equity lawyer in New York, Hong Kong, Tel Aviv, and later moved into venture capital. I had the pleasure of meeting Roy and talking to him about the Galien Foundation. I'd say about a year ago, Roy, if I'm not mistaken, maybe a little less, a little more. And he talked with great passion about his commitment to biomedical innovation all around the world. And though he's based outside of Tel Aviv, his focus is, and the fund's focus is global. So Roy, thank you. And again, congratulations. Next, Johannes Fruhoff, who is the founder and president of BioLabs and Lab Central. Dr. Fruhoff has a background as a physician working in the diverse, often fragmented health ecosystem, I believe, even though where you are, it's a little more structured. It's still obviously multiple tiers of government, private industry, people paying and so forth. You're 15 years, I'll say this lovingly, a serial biotech entrepreneur. You've dedicated much of your life mission to redefining life science entrepreneurship and helping to build startup ecosystems. And you've brought that into your role, of course, with BioLabs and Lab Central. Thank you for joining us today. Again, to you and your colleagues, a very hearty congratulations. Next, Mary Howard. Mary Howard is the program director of Design Technologies. She also, like many of the colleagues you'll meet here, are like those of you who are listening in. She too is a serial entrepreneur. I guess you have to be one to know one, Mary. Is that the case? You can answer. That's okay. You can say, yeah, I think so. But she has been involved in the Accelerator for Biosciences. I think in Connecticut, the Entrepreneurship Lab in New York City. You really have done exceptionally well. I think you have 500 alum that have raised something like $2.3 billion in advancing innovations in therapeutics, bioinformatics, diagnostics, medical devices, and digital health. It's quite a sum. And again, I acknowledge you. I congratulate you and your colleagues, not just on your fundraising ability or obviously helping companies get to that sort of number, but also being part of the Galien Foundation finalists. Sally Elan is one of the leaders of JLabs, which is part of the Johnson & Johnson Innovation System. She's the head of JLabs in Washington, D.C., where I have to say I'm calling in from today. I'm here at the famed Watergate Hotel, and I'm privileged to be with everyone around the world. Now, as head of JLabs, she sets in Washington, D.C., I don't want her to overstretch, but she sets the strategic direction and oversees all the operational activities for JLabs in the greater Washington metro area, including Maryland and Virginia. I just want to mention to people may not realize it, but after the US government, academia is the biggest industry in the greater Washington area. And within academic medical centers particularly, you have a tremendous amount of creative people with lots of ideas who want to spin out companies. And they have certainly an ally in Sally and JLabs in the Washington area. Now, she's joined JLabs serving as the senior director, as I mentioned, the strategy and operations on the global external innovation team at Johnson & Johnson, where she supports portfolio management and reporting strategic business development efforts across the organization. So you're based in Washington, you have global focus. So thank you for that. Next, I'd like to welcome Daniela Krajak. She's the founding partner of Dynamic Capital. And again, she is serving on a number of boards. They may be portfolio companies that Dynamic has invested in, but she'll tell us about that. She's been on other boards before this. She has worked with the Stevens Institute of Technology, really one of the great engineering and technology schools in the United States, right outside of New York City. She was a trustee there. I don't know if you're a graduate there as well. You are a proud graduate. So kudos to them. They have produced a world leader in health innovation. So a tip of the hat to Stevens Institute of Technology. You began your career as a co-founder of Wave Biotech, where you were really passionate about disruptive technology. And you actually championed a number of successful exits for the enterprise and acquisitions by GE Healthcare. So you really understand what it is to nurture an entrepreneur and also get them to the next stage of the adventure. So congratulations to you on that, and congratulations on being a Galien finalist. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce everyone to Dr. Tom Daniel. Tom is on the board of the Scripps Research. I guess it's Scripps Research, not Institute, but Scripps Research. You chair the Scripps Board of Overseers. You're currently the chair of a number of their companies. You've been connected to and led the research and development organizations at some major companies Immunex, which I remember very well in Seattle, which really was one of the great pioneers in oncology. I think was not GCSF, it was maybe GM, one of the early macrophage type companies. So you really have a great history in biotherapeutic innovation. You've been with Amgen, you've been with Ambrex, and you were also with the pioneer in oncology, Celgene. So you have a great clinical and development experience that you brought to this new effort. You were a venture partner at ARC Venture Partners, and so much more. So obviously, Scripps Research is in great hands. Tom, Dr. Daniel, so thank you very much for joining us today. And we have also with us, and I want to make sure that let me just see. Oh, is Philippe with us? I just want to see. He's not with us. Okay. We have with us a wonderful colleague that I want to introduce to you. We have Jerome van Beeldveld. Is that correct, Jerome? I hope I got your name somewhat correct. Why don't you tell us?
That's okay. It's Van Beervliet. It's okay. I used to be in the States. They called me Van B. It was also fine, as long as I know it's me.
Van B. I like that very much. That's innovative, and I appreciate innovation. So you have 20 years. You're obviously with VIB Innovation and Business, and better known as VIB. I wonder if it's any relationship to the name, but you'll tell us later on. You have 2 decades of expertise, a cross-disciplinary experience in the medical business and biotech environments. And before taking on the role as managing director and the general management of VIB, you trained as a veterinary internal medicine specialist, and you're accredited by the American College of Veterinary Internal Medicine. You have a PhD as well, and it's quite impressive. You're really one of the people who's responsible for driving these collaborative efforts. And I'm certainly going to want to ask you about the importance of collaboration in helping companies success. So we have representation here from incubators, accelerators, and private equity groups. There's a lot of harmony. It's a lot of differences. As I said earlier, I want to ask 2 of our panelists this key question. Mati, Mary, Mati, you go first. How do you think, or why do you think the foundation selected Ion Labs as a finalist out of the countless others?
Thank you, Gil. And honestly, I have no idea. I have to be very honest about that. But we were very happy and very honored to be chosen. It's our first year of operation. We just launched about a year ago. And Ion Labs has successfully been able to already select 3 founders, and will complete our selection of up to 5 founders by the end of this year. I think to answer your question is, we try to do something that's very typical of Israeli innovators, which is when everyone tells you that it's impossible to do what you're trying to achieve, we go out to do it. And we were able to somehow put together this partnership, launch it successfully, and so far actually show that it can work. So maybe that's a good reason.
I think it's a great reason, and actually I'm going to pivot later on to Jerome, who talks about collaboration in a diverse sector, and find out how important is collaborating with diverse partners to someone's success. So Mary, Design Technologies, why do you think we chose it?
Well, I'd have to.
Don't give me Mati's sort of like diplomatic, I have no idea answer.
Well, if I can't use that, I will just add to his surprise at this. But it's really great to be here and to be with such great company. You know, we are not just founders, but we're most of us are founders, and so we're a little bit different in that we are founders for founders, and our focus has been in the Metro New York area, where we've had really the pleasure of building and being part of the creation of the New York City community, which has been, fun and rewarding and tough and heartbreaking over the last couple of years. And we've been very, very fortunate with the quality of people we've had a chance to work with. The impact is kind of speaks for the quality of the people. I think there's just a huge commitment in New York City to make New York City a new leading area, and we're seeing those numbers now. There are many people from all over the world who are very comfortable and very happy being in New York. And so it's a very special place. And having an opportunity to work with so many medical research institutions and incubators and some of the people's organizations on this call has really been inspiring. We've had a chance to do some very different things, structured curriculum. We've had a chance to have an opportunity to provide a lot of personalized support, mostly because so many people want to get involved. So we've really become, a very big group of people who all really want to see the community move forward.
Congratulations, and thank you for that. As many of our listeners and our finalists know, we have the Galien Foundation Summit, which is held in New York City this Thursday. We have a very exciting program of world leaders. Begins at 8 a.m. It concludes, I think, just before 5 for people to run back and change and go over to the West Side to the Museum of Natural History for the award ceremony. Mary, I hope you're contributing to bringing more people to our summit, certainly. Sally, J Labs is one of the historic incubators, accelerators in our industry. I remember it must be more than 10 or 15 years ago meeting with people from J Labs. You're certainly one of the more seasoned enterprises. You've got a track record, but listening to the colleagues around us, some of them are newer enterprises. Why do you think J Labs was selected as a pre-Galien finalist for the category?
Yeah, no, first, thank you on behalf of Johnson & Johnson Innovation, J Labs. We're certainly honored to be part of this cohort. Some of our partners are on this call too, and looking at our model, which you highlighted. So J Labs did launch 10 years ago in San Diego, California. We really recognized supporting global scientists and entrepreneurs. We really needed to embed ourselves where we see innovation thriving. We're really passionate about how can we remove obstacles to success to help innovators with their science discoveries and accelerating their science and technology. I think one of the important aspects that I think has grown the portfolio is as we're no strings attached. So while Johnson & Johnson Innovation is bringing everything we can to the table from our expertise, our internal insights as a large healthcare company, the companies that do incubate with us and entrepreneurs that do join us are free to develop their science while holding on to their intellectual property. So we want to make connections. We deliver programs and essentially provide turnkey, capital efficient, flexible platform infrastructures for entrepreneurs and early stage companies to tap into. And when I mention our global footprint, we're located at 13 locations around the world now, and those include some of our partnered sites. And if you look at the success of our portfolio, we've incubated since we launched 10 years ago, 860 companies. And those companies have secured over $67 billion in financing and strategic relationships. 47 companies have IPO'd, and there's been 38 acquisitions. And I think importantly, we've also been able to drive collaborations with those companies. So we've done some type of deal or partnership, we being Johnson & Johnson, with 270 companies. And excitingly, we want to support diverse entrepreneurs. When you look at the portfolio, 30% are female-led CEOs, and an additional 30% are minority-led companies. And that's incredibly important that we need to showcase and support.
Thank you for that, and congratulations again. So I wanted to move over to Daniela and then Roy, and I'm finding this fascinating, sort of to get your perspective of why you were selected. Obviously, all of you were selected, and I want to reinforce the fact that the initial screening committee is a group of 6 industry executives of note, some CEOs. Some of us have exited of our own enterprises. Some of us have been in private equity. So we had a very clear sense of what value is or outcomes are. And then there was another screening committee of chair and CEOs of major health companies, and then finally our Nobel laureate committee. So I wanted to ask Daniela and Roy, give us some perspective. Why do you think the initial committee found you to be outstanding in the field?
Well, first, thank you, Gil, and thank you to the Galien Foundation for this incredible honor. It's really an honor to be here, even on this panel.
It's mutual. It's mutual. You're very kind, all of you. But I have to say, our role is to seek out and acknowledge outstanding enterprises that have the capacity, the vision to improve human life all around the world. So thank you for the acknowledgement for the foundation and the committee. We in turn turn it back to you.
Great. So I think, early on in my career, I fell in love with life science industrials, which sounds a bit crazy probably for most on the panel. But I really saw it as an opportunity to impact patient outcomes across the entire industry and across all therapeutic modalities. So, founding Dynamic Capital to really focus exclusively on the picks and axes that are absolutely essential in every biotech and biopharma lab around the world. Think about your labs, think about the equipment that you've invested in and about the consumables that you purchase every month. Everything in these labs and everything enabling these discoveries, developments, and manufacturing is created and built by the types of companies that we seek out and invest in. And it's been really an overlooked subsector, I think, of the industry, an important one, obviously fundamental to the industry as a whole, but really an attractive space. And I think uniquely what we do is we really found that no other firm was focusing on this area. And so to build a firm that is entirely focused on life science industrials, that really dedicates our energy towards supporting those entrepreneurs, helping them with critical and existential decisions, really the desire to support them and help them navigate and prevent the mistakes. In fact, some of which I undertook at my first company. And I look back on that and think, it would have been absolutely transformative to have an investor like us interested and at the table at the time. So that's what we strive to be.
Thank you for that. You've said some things that I definitely want to circle back on. An investor like us, the sense of perspective and philosophy. I'm definitely going to be circling back and asking you all about a little bit of your operational philosophy and what you feel makes your organizations distinct as incubators, accelerators, or private equity groups. Because obviously, for those listening in, having been in a private equity relationship myself, often they say it's all about return on investment. But I think in health, there's 2 elements to return on investment, or there's 2 sides to the balance sheet. One side is return on investment to the limited partners. The other side of the balance sheet is make a difference for humanity, and you're balancing ideally unmet medical need along with wise investment strategy. We're going to explore that today as well. Roy, Amun is really one of the most significant private equity groups in the world. You and your colleagues have worked around the world. You have looked at the innovation hubs in Boston, in Israel, other places in the world. Why do you think Amun was selected by the committee?
Yeah, so first, I also have to start by thanking, the Prix Leon Foundation, and it's a great honor to be nominated together with the esteemed colleagues here around the room. Amun started about 5 years ago when we saw this, I think, a unique moment in time where there is the convergence of biology and technology. And our tagline says accelerating cure. And this is what were set out to do. I think what is unique about what we're building and trying to build here is that, first of all, we play across stages. So we invest from sponsored research in academia all the way up to pre-IPO rounds in companies. We invest across the space. So we do pharmaceuticals, we do device, we do diagnostics, we do digital health. And I think we place a lot of emphasis on what we call investor additionality, meaning everything that is beyond just writing a check. So we have about 55 team members, and a lot of our attention is focused on how can we support our portfolio in very concrete ways, for example, around team building. So we really partner with them around how we build ventures, being design partners, helping them fill the roles in their C-level or advisory board or their boards, helping them with even the storytelling or making the right connections through our very expensive network. So I think when you look sort of at the breadth of what we are aiming to achieve and the way that we support our portfolio and really being a partner to them in this long journey, the ups and downs of running a venture, I would like to think that this is part of the reasons that we were nominated.
Beautiful, thank you. Johannes, again, congratulations to you and your colleagues for being selected. What do you think the magic was that the committee sort of honed in on?
Thank you, Gil, and thank you to the committee for having us part of this illustrious group. I think I speak for all of our team members, both at BioLabs and Lab Central, when I say that we're thrilled to be part of this. And so we set out about 12 years ago in Kendall Square to change the way that people build biotech companies. And I think we have been able to create sort of a new paradigm and this very capital efficient and time efficient access to shared lab space, but so much more. The community that comes with it, the connections have quickly been demonstrated to be sort of the preferred way of doing biotech companies. Rather than spending a lot of money up front on your facilities, you want to really invest the money after you know that the science works. And so I think that's what we're proud of, and we just to give you a few stats, and I'm amazed, Sally, to hear that the number and the breadth of the JLabs reach. We have not quite that many numbers, but today there are about 385 companies that use our labs. We have 16 locations around the world. We are East Coast and West Coast, and in between, building Chicago. We recently launched Dallas, but now we're also in Japan and in Europe. And so I think the model resonates with many stakeholders. The one number that I'm proudest of is to say that we now know that over 700 patients have been treated with drugs invented at our labs, invented or developed inside of our labs. And so I hope that at some point there will be a drug approved that was invented here, but we are not that far yet. Takes a long time.
Congratulations. That's so impressive. No, let me jump into ask Tom, Dr. Daniel, and you have a storied history in the biotechnology space. I had many opportunities to speak with Steve Duzan at Immunex when he was leading the company down by the harbor. We would take walks together. You've been there and really at the genesis of sort of biotech startups blossoming into go-to-market enterprises. Two-part question, I hope you don't mind. One, why do you think we chose Scripps Research? And two, just briefly, I would be fascinated by your sort of going back down memory lane for a few moments, going back to the days of research at Immunex and looking at enterprises today. Just in a few words, share with us, have things radically changed in terms of drug development?
Sure, Gil. Thanks for the opportunity to be on this panel and for the great honor it is to be among this panelist list. We too are excited at Scripps Research to be considered for this award. As you asked, I have the great privilege of representing Scripps not only as a board member and chair of the oversight committee for the research and development, but also as someone who both founded a company out of Scripps, who acquired a company out of Scripps, Receptos, who funded an early company out of Scripps, Abide, is on the board of another company called Aspen out of Scripps, and have observed the sort of, I guess, synergy that is represented by the productivity and the innovation as it's been deployed. One of the magical features, in my view, of many of the comments that have been made by panelists, particularly Roy, it takes a village to create a therapy. It is not something that one aspect does, not laboratories or the capital or the innovative concept, but it takes an integrated convergence really of, network connectivity, the sort of prototype of what can work and following the paths that have been created before. And then finally, an integrated vision of the facilitative leader, a sort of infrastructure required to deliver on all that. And Scripps has been not just minorly, but majorly successful in that context. 5 FDA-approved drugs have been discovered at Scripps. I had the privilege at Celgene of acquiring Receptos during that period, and ozanimod was among them. We have over 1,100 patents have been submitted. The entire institute is formulated around the concept of taking very innovative science and deploying it in such a way that it has impact in the biomedical sphere. And it is represented on my board of overseers, where we have not only pharma leaders from people who run the committees that you've used to select the awardees here, but also we have private equity and venture capitalists and a network of people in this community who understand what could happen as a consequence of those early ideas being levered out. I can tell you, Sally, that J Labs has been very, very important for a number of our companies in San Diego. Aspen was incubated there, where I'm on the board. So I think that if there's one thing that the committee may have selected Scripps for, it's the culmination and the convergence of those capabilities and the impact that our efforts have had. In terms of exits over the last 5 years, there's been $12 billion worth of acquisition capital deployed in order to take companies out, in exits for products that are impactful. So it's a bit of a juggernaut, and it's a wonderful time in my career to be able to sort of participate in this and help guide the networks that we all need, to take the innovation from Scripps and to play it forward. If you ask me to sort of go down memory lane back to Immunex, the dominant theme that's changed is that there's attention to the entire convergence required. Immunex and its success around Leukine, which you mentioned earlier, and then Enbrel, which has been a juggernaut for Amgen. Those successes were almost accidents. of a research institute that was successful in creating products in spite of the major emphasis on creating research. So I think that, you know, we're now much more aware of how the integrated whole has to play.
That's a very important insight. Thank you for that. Thank you. So Jerome, thank you for joining us. And it's, as everybody sort of acknowledged collaboratively, it's a privilege for me and the foundation to be among all of you as finalists. You're really all extraordinary in vision and ability. Why do you think the committee chose VIB?
Well, yes, thank you very much, first of all, and I'm truly honored to be among this panel. I mean, the quality of the panelists really feel like quite an honor to
I agree with you. It's people listening in should follow all these people, find out their Twitter handles, LinkedIn profiles, and definitely keep track. These are when it comes to life science, incubation, acceleration, and investment equity, you're the group, right? You're the group.
Yeah. But maybe to answer your question, I think in terms of the panel, I can actually speak perhaps from a European perspective. We are a Belgian-based academic institution that very much plays on the interplay between research technologies and the breakthrough questions in different fields in which we're active. Many of them, or most of them, relating to important disease fields for patients. And so if you want to really play in this early game, it's about applying the technological advances, but also the curiosity-driven research to go after the key insights, which put our scientists on the map. But I'd like to think if you stop there, it's a bit of a missed opportunity. And so since the start 25 years ago of VIB, we really took up the challenge to take it further and to take it to heart, to stand by the predictions that say that science gives us. And actually, it's over those years, and it's a trend that's continuing. More and more of the early development in big pharma companies comes from outside. I think over 50% now of the new approvals come from outside, from biotechs, and that's exactly where we play. But it also means that there's an urgent need for professional scientific accelerators, and I would like to call ourselves this, and I can give you some examples. First, over the last 25 years, roughly speaking, about 35 billion euro of enterprise value has been created in Belgium. At least a good 15% of that comes directly from our startups, and even a larger fraction, almost 80%, is somehow connected through really the big collaborations which you mentioned, Gil. Where we have strategic collaborations with these units and helping them along. And so I think, in fact, I can even say that on this panel, not only I'm indeed connected to Sally at J&J, but also we in fact have two nominees on some of the other panels, for the Galien Prize. Our Genix company launched Vyvgart, and Sanofi Ablings, one of our early startups, commercializing the nanobody technology, is on the biotech panel. And so I think that just goes to show, and for example, the nanobody technology is a nice example of this, where it started with serendipity, with the academic interest and curiosity-driven research to understand what went on in these llama antibodies, but then having the creativity to apply them to very difficult type of epitopes or targets, which would otherwise be inaccessible to classical antibodies, and developing then the industrial machinery to take them all the way to the market and where they are now. And the role of VIB plays through this is really to, and I'd like actually the statement that Tom here also made, is the ecosystem view. We are a nonprofit. We take an ecosystem view in Belgium here to look at what's really needed. And so we've created a network organization. We've created a venture fund, the Bio Ventures, active in early stage VC investing. We've created even primary schools for English-speaking people, which of course in Europe is an important aspect if you want to attract talent. But I can also say I've created and I've the luxury to work with an exceptional team of not only deal-making people, but also early drug innovators. And in fact, Tom, you'll be happy to know some of them are ex-Immunex colleagues who are still very excited about their time there. So I think that enthusiasm.
Excited about being with Immunex or working with Tom previously?
I imagine it might be. I'm not sure about Tom, but certainly with
okay.
Immunex,
Well, you'll have
in
to
the very
ask.
early days, pre-Amgen. So I think on the rank ligand, for example, and some of the other programs that were run there. But anyway, so I think it's to go down memory lane. For me, it's a collective memory lane. I'm very honored to be here. And I think, of course, what it's all about for us is really looking at the ecosystem. But in the end, the overall aim, I think, of the prize, but also of our mission is to make a difference for patients and filling in the gaps, which at least in our ecosystem were there and are increasingly less and less there. But obviously, we are still looking at the US and very honored to be part of this US-based panel. Because obviously it's an extremely important example that the US ecosystems set for us. So
well, it's a global panel, my friend, and I think that many of the people here are calling in late at night from different places of the world. I acknowledge all of you who are joining us from Europe as part of this call. It's very, very appreciated. So I want to swing back now and dive into sort of a philosophical question, a structural question. From my own experience in private equity specifically, what I've seen is some people focus much more on business fundamentals as on the private equity side. They really want to make sure that people are using cash well, that they're focused on the business metrics, they're moving their pipeline or their product development line appropriately through the regulatory system. It's really with a keen eye toward either a go-to-market or an exit. That's one philosophy. The other aspect is the nurturing that goes on. We have a blend here in this category, and some of you may be private equity funds, but there's a lot of nurturing and connecting. So I wanted to ask you an unusual question that I think portfolio companies really need to focus in on, which is when you, as individual leaders of the organization, say, we're going to work with that founder, we're going to work with that company. And the journey begins, right? That the adventure begins. We commit. I don't know whether you're doing a term sheet with them or a contract with them, whatever your structure might be. I really would appreciate knowing what you do beyond the writing of the check to support the enterprise. Sometimes it's we're going to be on your board and we're going to give you sort of your Series A funding and get you going to get to the Series B. Some of you, we're going to be with you as a portfolio company for the distance. You have different approaches, different philosophies. Could I call upon you to ask you to share a little bit, not why we selected you, a little bit of pretend I'm a founder and you're really interested and you say, we're going to work with this, we're going to work with these people. They're going to address a need. They seem to have very good background. What magic happens after we're going to work with these people? So let me go back around again and start with Matti. Matti, you said you have 5 companies. You're going to have 5 companies, founders within your umbrella group in this consortium that you and others are leading. I know that you hold seminars for your portfolio companies. I've seen you and Aon all over the internet in terms of gatherings all around the world. Obviously, you're building global community as well. But if you were to say, Gil, you're going to address an unmet medical need we believe in, we think that your approach is sound. What happens after that?
So when we set up a new company, we set it up always with three principles in mind. First of all, it has to address a demonstrated, identified, unmet need of the industry that several industry partners are going to come together to say, we want to help in making this happen. Secondly, it has to be truly groundbreaking innovation with the best scientists that can solve it. And third, they need to be good people, right? That's something you can't teach, and that's something you can't nurture. And we have a very strict zero asshole policy in our lab, and we really evaluate
zero asshole policy. Is that
very
like one of the
strict,
values?
it's very official. It's going up on the wall, but we're very strict about that because we're in, and Johannes was mentioning this before, we're in an industry that you have to really believe in what you're doing. Because you can actually make impact and you can actually treat patients' lives. And we're working in the private industry, but are able to hold our heads high, being proud of what we do. Once we select a founder and put them together based upon those three criteria, we have a very strict methodology that we adhere to, which has been tested and tried. And we set them up with champions from within the R&D organizations of our partners, from Pfizer, from Amazon, from Teva, from Merck, and all of our other partners that enable them access to data so that they can train their AI and technology models. They work with them to co-develop their technology. They identify projects that they can work on. And as well as Amazon setting them up on the cloud with the best system architecture solutions, and VC fund, Israel Biotech Fund, that can help make sure that they have a great business model. And this is all within the methodology of Biomedics, our strategic partner who helped us design this. And what we do with them is ultimately what we're trying to do is help them to achieve two things. One, that they can raise their next rounds of funds and continue to grow independently. That's critical. And secondly, to be able to come to the world and in the AI for drug discovery and computational technologies for drug discovery and development, probably the biggest challenge is being able to come to customers and to the world with a technology that is actually validated, that it actually works, and that has trust of big global pharma partners that are the customers ultimately, that this can actually be implemented and it actually works. So we're trying to help these founders come with a technology that the best global partners in the world can stand behind and say this actually works. And that's something we're trying to achieve. And with a very strict methodology behind that, where we give them a lot more than just the basic funding in the pre-seed round.
Thank you, Mati. I appreciate that. That was very informative. And Mary, you obviously have a very a hyper geographic focus. You're focusing on the possibility of growing the life science enterprise in the New York metropolitan area. I've always thought of, obviously, New Jersey is the medicine chest of the nation. Johnson & Johnson and Merck and all these companies were founded there. Obviously, it's morphed. Then suddenly the Bay Area, San Francisco and Seattle, the Pacific Northwest became sort of a hub for biotech. France, particularly Paris and Lyon, have always been sort of interesting centers of biomedical innovation. Israel has become really one of the world's great centers in terms of medical technologies. Germany has always been well represented in the biotech area. Boston really became, the Cambridge area became a mega hub for the diverse health innovation industry. And for some reason, New York, aside from having office buildings, and the Alexandria Life Science Center, of course, was just an extraordinary center. New York was kind of always left out of it. So you're in the New York area. I'd be curious to get your take on companies that approach you. You do your due diligence. You say, something, we're gonna lean into these folks. This is important. What's your philosophy? What's your approach?
Well, it's really been an extraordinary opportunity to be in New York City. Having come out of doing strategic planning at Bain, and then being on MIT's Media Lab board and the Enterprise Forum. I was a Cambridge person and came down to New York, really didn't expect an entrepreneurial community. And I will tell you that it's been extraordinary what I have seen. The bench in New York is just huge. In 10 years, we've run the program now, and we're in the 11th year of the cohort. And it was 8 years before we had a application to the program. So that was 2,000 applications in that had the same technology. And having done the same work across the country, I just had never experienced anything like that. A lot of people come to New York from all over the world because they're comfortable in New York. And so we've had the opportunity to work, and not just with ventures coming to the United States, from Europe, from Israel, but also from Africa, from Asia, from Latin America. And they've gone forward. There's a very different financing that we see in New York of those early stage ventures. But the way we do it is, I'm sure a lot of other people do the same thing. We find external people to look at the science and the commercialization potential, investor interest, and what's really important to the point Gil made is, as a really rigorous screening process, but the end of it is people who have been through the program deciding, do they want to have someone like that be a part of this program? Is it a fit? So there's a bit of self-selection in there too. And it's an important effort to try and create something from scratch, which is this community of entrepreneurs in the bioscience field, and all the infrastructure and people to get to know one another. But that's that's really what we've been focusing on, and we just look at it as a very, very long-term project.
Thank you for that. Thank you. It's very insightful. Sally, you mentioned earlier, J Labs has been involved in, hundreds of companies at this point for the decade. And you're certainly a premier sort of go-to address for entrepreneurs. I'm also wondering, being a premier address, does that mean that your sort of like standard or bar has to be even exceptionally higher, so that, like any private equity group or incubator, accelerator, I think the most challenging resource we have all had is time to really give these companies. So what's your approach in evaluating and saying welcome to the family?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think we're all leaning into it with very similar filters. So we start working with entrepreneurs. It could be an individual that needs lab bench space, all the way up to companies that will move and relocate into our incubators, so that we can provide them our expertise and wrap around our mentorship and our resources. We do have a selection process. So we are looking first and foremost, we always start first and foremost with the science and technology. Is this, can we support this type of company from Johnson & Johnson? Or do we think it will be incredibly disruptive to the marketplace, and we see a value to our patients that we want to support and accelerate? And then we're going to look at, what are their project plans for the next 12 to 18 months? Most of the people, if not all of the people that are incubating with us, look, these individuals are putting their lives on hold to really, walk through walls for some of the science and technology. And I think you see that in the companies that are going to be successful. I think from a selection of the over 800 companies that have incubated with J Labs, we're in the mid 80% for companies that are still viable. And I think that goes to the selection. We are looking for some financial fluidity, but we have companies incubating with us that are on entirely non-dilutive grant funding. And then, that spans companies that are, with us that are raising Series C. So is we look quite broadly, and there's a diversity of the types of companies and technologies. But I think what's most important, and I think everyone has touched on this, Tom certainly highlighted it and others as well, it's what are the network connections that we can make? What are the big company benefits that we can bring to the table so that, as Johannes highlighted, these companies can put their capital towards their science and their research and drive and accelerate it faster. And I think this is why wherever our locations are, we really think of ourselves of embedding ourselves into the ecosystems. We can't work alone. We all have strategic partners within the ecosystems, and where our companies thrive is when we all work together. And just going to the question you highlighted before, which Mary addressed, why New York? So we have J Labs in New York City, and thinking about the diversity of patients in the city of New York is such a strength for that environment. Outside of the academic institutes and the spin-outs that are coming from those research centers of excellence, the access to biobanks and diversity of individuals in that city is a representation of the world. So we see that in companies and why there's also staying and residing in New York City and not leaving to go to other areas which have formerly been the places that you should be, not any longer.
So that's very insightful. Thank you. And I want to go to Daniela and Roy now with the same question, but I know, Sally, I sort of sense J Labs is a combination of incubator, accelerator, and private equity. Would that be accurate, or do you consider yourself more an accelerator?
No, I think that's spot on. So J&J Innovation, we bring all the tools that we have within J&J Innovation. So we will incubate companies. We will work to drive deals with the companies that incubate with us, and those deals can look widely different. Many times it's collaboration, research collaboration opportunities. And then we'll make assessments of, do we want to make an equity investment into the company? So I think this is where we have a benefit and opportunity to stay close with companies and bring all those tools to the table to make them successful. We've got some great examples of where we've done all three of those.
Well, hold on to that. I might be asking you that question in a little bit, so hold on to that. I'm going to swing over to Daniela now. And Daniela, we've been looking very deeply at approach. And for you in Dynamic Capital, and also Amun, you're putting capital to work, you're putting time to work. You have, both of you and Roy have very specific foci in terms of your strategy. You're not looking at life sciences broadly. You're kind of looking at life sciences with a very sort of like keen eye. So what's your approach? It has to be somewhat different than others that are a little broader. You're more specific. Is that accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it comes down to when you consider what we look for in a technical founder or a technology or an opportunity, we recognize that it's very much mutual, and it has to be, we have to differentiate ourselves and we have to stand out from a crowd. Albeit a smaller crowd in life science industrials because of our focus, it's much more underserved a segment, but that'll change over time. And we want to have the staying power and the ability to really be that partner to the entrepreneurs. And I think, what founders and technical founders have struggled with, particularly in the industrials, is a lack of knowledgeable funders who are really dedicated to the space and who can make a difference. I know, speaking from experience, we bootstrapped our first business, not by choice, but because there were no funders really interested in doing that in the early 2000s. and in that environment. And it was tough. So I think recognizing what we can bring to the table and really, everyone's done such a great job of highlighting what they bring. Sally and her team at J&J, we actually have one of our portfolio companies is a J Labs company in New York City, Envisagenics. And, when we look to that, we really make a very hard determination. Can we make a difference in the trajectory of the company's growth? Can we make a difference in their potential? Can we bring to them talent, partner networks, supply networks, relationships for exiting or licensing? Is it something that we can really add value? And we'll often watch companies for some period of time, until technical risk is mitigated, but until we get comfortable that we can actually also be a great partner to them. And I think that oftentimes we deliver a message. Sometimes that's hard. We don't like to say no, but we say no a lot, obviously, as many on the panel do probably. But we make it a point to really go back and articulate the why behind the no. And I can tell you that is a big differentiator, because being able to articulate why we didn't invest, what we're looking for in order to invest, or come back to us when you're reaching this milestone, has actually served us. And actually, in point of fact, quite a couple of companies in our portfolio, we'd done that initially, and they did come back and they did share with us the data when they had it. And that was made the determination for us to get involved at that point. So I think that's a big difference in what we try to deliver here.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for that insight. Roy, I had the pleasure of visiting your offices and looking through some picture books that were in your lobby. And in the picture books, there were reunions of portfolio companies where you, if I might be wrong, you'll tell me, but you bring some of your portfolio companies together it looked like on an annual basis to bring the companies you're funding together. So it's a two-part question. One is, like I've asked everyone else, your criteria. You're a major fund, you're global. You and your other fund partners are very seasoned private equity executives. You, in your case, you've been on the other side. You've been the one writing the agreements and contracts in many cases. So you know the implications of everything you do. I'd be interested in a two-part question. One, how do you select? I've met some of the portfolio companies, as a matter of fact. They're led by outstanding, many cases, serial life science entrepreneurs who know what they're doing. How do you choose? And the other aspect is, I sense as a private equity group, you're not just interested in offer them corporate advice and capital to get them going. I sense that you're trying to build some form of community among your portfolio companies. Is that accurate?
Yes, so I'll try to address both questions. So first of all, I completely agree with what Danielle said before about founders looking for investors who can really support them and guide them through the journey. And I think maybe the accurate way to look at it is not only how we choose, but also how entrepreneurs choose us. Because I think the best entrepreneurs also have a choice between investors. And they're making their choice based also on elements that we're looking at, meaning the people. Are those people that you want to work with? Are those people that are mentorable, people who will listen? Especially as the journey of a venture is never a straight arrow. It always pivoted from one side to the next. Of course, there are elements that Sally, for example, touched on, like the technology and the size of the market. We always go after major killers, major cost drivers in healthcare, and we look for places where we can make an impact. Now, as investors, and now I talk specifically also as an early stage investors, for example, we go as early as sponsored research, and there we try to be helpful in guiding them about how do you build or how do you design a study in a way that will not only achieve academic goals, but can also then be translatable into commercial goals? How can you then form a company around this? We try to be helpful by helping bring in the people, bring in the entrepreneurs. So when you do venture formation out of academia, often what you have is the technology, you have the researchers, but you don't really have a founding team. And so you need to bring that team. And this is another element that we help do. For example, in the past year, we helped make 17 placements into portfolio companies, including of CEOs and board members. Then there is a very strong element of enabling them to speak with the industry, with other players in the industry. We always think that, to go to Tom's point and Jerome's point and, others here on the call, it's all about the ecosystem. Also, to your question, we don't think you can go at it alone. You need to bring the wisdoms of many. And if we can open the door for them to consult with, sometimes it's even other funds, but it can also be, of course, other industry players, be it payers, providers, strategics. That's also a big part of what we do. And a last element is help them to articulate their story and tell their story. It's important not only for fundraising, but also to secure their first paying customers or an important pilot. So we look at all these in different elements of where we can make an impact. We also measure our impact, and we are trying, and to your second question, yes, we're trying to bring our CEOs together in different forums, in different settings, because there is also wealth of experience and wealth of knowledge and a wealth of opportunities for collaborations, even between portfolio companies, that can help them through that journey. So it's not just about supporting an individual company. I think it's looking at it from an ecosystem perspective. And I would argue that the hard work for everyone here on the call starts the moment after you write the check. I mean, this is getting to the deal is one thing, but then you actually have to support the company. It's not just about showing up to a board meeting, but it's on a weekly basis, being in touch and asking them, how can we help you? And offering your help, offering an advice, and working together with them in order to achieve their goal and also our goal, which is accelerating cure at the end of the day.
Thank you for that. That was incredibly insightful. I think this audience appreciates candor. So I want to swing over to Johannes. You're in a hotbed of biotech and digital health, medical device innovation. I mean, the Cambridge area is, let's face it, everything is there. And probably because you have so much similar to Washington, you've got a huge academic base there. So you've got people attached to, every single major medical institution of note is probably in the Boston area, whether it's Tufts, Mass General, New England Deaconess, the Brigham, you name it, and they're all coming out with ideas. So what's your approach to sort of vetting out these ideas and possibilities and saying, okay, we're going to do this?
Yeah, so thank you, Gil. We are indeed fortunate to have many smart scientists come to Boston from all over the world to do their studies here, and eventually many of them stay to build companies. That's also my own story. And so, yeah, we have, in fact, hundreds of applications per year from the Boston area of companies who want to move into our shared labs. We have established, some of you know this, a process of company selection where we meet once a month with our partners to select the companies that are among the applicants that are most deserving to move in, because we are managing a limited resource. Even though we have space for over 100 companies now in the Boston area, that is still less than there's demand for. And so we look for four major factors. So you want to know what the science is that the company is developing. We want to know that they have a plan beyond basic science. And because we're not competing with the academic institutions, we want to have groups developing products that reach society. We want to also know who's on the team. What have they done before? And how should we trust that they will actually develop that idea along the business plan that they've promoted? And lastly, because we are not investors at Lab Central and Biolabs, have they raised any money? Has anybody from the outside world vindicated or subscribed to their idea? Or is it just this team that believes in their own bubble? It's different if you've convinced your rich uncle to invest in you, or you've convinced a professional investor to give you money, or maybe the NIH to write you a grant. So those are all key important questions that we use to vet the quality of the groups. And of course, that gives us a good overview. We look at non-confidential decks only, and we have them present in person. And that's a fairly rigorous procedure, and that results in very high success rates. So we're glad, and we're keeping that across the whole network now, even in places where there's a little bit less competition, as we see and demand for our spaces. But certainly that has served us well.
So I don't know, I didn't ask anybody on this call to disclose if they have any rich uncles who are participating in the webinar, but I know, Johannes, if you do have a relative here, you and your organization are very, very compelling. So I'm certainly they will invest. So I want to swing over now to Tom. Tom, Scripps Research is historic. I mean, it's really one of the great institutions in the United States. You've had a lot of time yourself to hone an investment strategy from your perspective. You've seen a lot of success. Sadly, you've seen a lot of failure as well. That's part of our industry. It's difficult. This is not an easy business to be in. Does Scripps Research have an approach in evaluating portfolio companies?
Scripps Research is unique in my view in that it not only develops concepts in the labs of investigators, and the innovation is reflected, in the sequential Nobel Prizes over the last 2 years, of our colleagues there. But the marriage of concept to practical application really happens around an institution created about 6 years ago and incorporated back into Scripps in 2018, called Caliber, where we in fact really have clinical development expertise and a preclinical focus that is effectively in place and positioned to help people think beyond first drug concept all the way to product fruition, if you will. And the consequence of having that in-house is that projects can mature further before company formation. We have been successful in bringing partners, including the Gates Foundation, AbbVie, and other institutions, the Wellcome Trust, in to help fund that. And the net outcome of that is that there's been opportunity to generate revenue and royalties that help with this historical, footprint, so that there's funding back to re-engage emerging product opportunities. And then, ultimately the real pitch happens no longer just to pharma companies around partnerships, or even just to individual investigators who have been approached by venture capitalists. But just to share a quick story, my colleague Ben Cravat has had a true leading role in the concept of chemical proteomics applied writ large across the space. And Ben had the wisdom to draw 2 other Scripps investigators into the founder mix for Vividian Therapeutics. And in so doing, really, each of them, by the way, MacArthur Fellows, and truly innovative in the chemical space. And by putting that sort of juggernaut together, the innovation that was realized there was in a position basically to either go public or to be acquired. And in the context of the productivity of that group, Bayer Pharmaceuticals acquired the company, but in fact is doing an experiment with Vividian to keep it intact and to have the board on which I serve, as does Ben, remain intact so that the innovative, engine is not lost, as is often the case after an acquisition. So there are some pretty unique features of the way Scripps has been able to capture its historical legacy and position that for not just exits and product advancement, but also regeneration of opportunity.
That's fantastic. And again, congratulations on all these achievements. So Jerome, I wanted to turn to you. You also have a very specific approach, you have a very specific background, but I wanted to ask you two-part question. One, obviously your approach to embracing portfolio companies, and also to some extent, how does your background play into this? And then I'm going to sort of wrap up. It's hard to believe we've been together for almost 90 minutes. It's gone so quickly. I think I'll petition the committee to give us another 30 minutes. No, I won't do that to you. But I am going to ask one last, after Jerome sort of gives us his insights, one last quick round robin question of all of you. And you can answer in a sentence or so. So Jerome, over to you. What's the philosophy that you and your organization take?
I think the philosophy at DIB has been the same since the beginning, and I guess I can summarize it in an analogy that we aim to be a Marie Curie on the one hand. So basically, we aim to really address the fundamental questions in certain areas of biology research. But we also aim to be a Louis Pasteur, meaning still addressing quite fundamental technology development questions or methodologies to really bring those, translate those into actual products or innovations that can make it to the market. And then actually, I would say we look for a Paul Janssen, the Dr. Paul Janssen, who was the scientist entrepreneur. That means that we basically incubate some of these stories. For example, the nanobodies is a very nice example. We've created by now 7 different companies based on nanobodies, which we incubate to varying degrees until we can deliver what we call an industry or an investor-ready proof of concept. So typically that involves quite a lot further steps than a typical academic lab would be able to do. And we do that by organizing the capabilities with industry-trained people inside our institute. And that allows us to co-create companies with, for example, some investors that are interested in putting in some money. While we actually execute the projects with our drug discovery teams, for example, we can actually look for the right management together with the investors. And then we become a board member once the company becomes fully fledged. And actually, I wanted to also mention, we'll go as far as even doing the finance for the company, the HR payroll for the company. We have an active incubator strategy also with regards to lab space, which we are continuously expanding in different campuses across Belgium. And so, so basically we try to take out, and I think somebody else said this on the panel here, try to take the load of all the aspects of which a biotech company cannot afford to lose their time or money on. While being a non-for-profit. And that's perhaps the last thing I'd like to mention. Sometimes on the boards of these companies, we can also play, because we're also a financial investor, we can also play a moderating role, because let's be honest, sometimes it gets heated in the boardroom. Investor interests aren't always aligned or may, just different views. And then it helps to be able to take the company's position as a founder of the company, because that's perhaps important to know. In Belgium, in fact, it's the institute indeed that founds the company, and then we look for the right management. So perhaps those are a few extra elements which are very similar to what was said before, but certainly some additional elements which may be just an addition to what was said before.
Thank you again, and congratulations again. So we have sadly 6 minutes left of our conversation, and then obviously people await to see another group of finalists, all worthy. I have one last quick question for you, and perhaps you can answer it in a sentence or two. So obviously, people are knocking on your doors all the time. They're knocking on your doors for advice, for capital, for connections, to better understand the very fragmented health ecosystem, how to deal with the regulatory system, how to deal with the payer system. It's very difficult to be a health innovator. You're responsible for harnessing all this information, guiding it through. So my question is, and I'll give you a second to think about it, if someone were sitting across from you and you had to give them your Yoda-like wisdom in a sentence or two about working with an accelerator, an incubator, a private equity organization, or a combination of all three, what would you say if you were across the table at a restaurant, a diner, a Starbucks? What would you say to them would be the number one thing they have to keep right in the front of their minds when they sit down with one of your colleagues who are participating in this call, as to essentially not blow it? What would be your core advice? And unfortunately, Mati, because I started with you, I again turn to you and to Mary, and Sally, to ask you each first for your one or two sentences. What are your words of wisdom to the person who will knock on your door? And then we'll conclude at 3:30.
So first of all, I'm looking very much forward because I've been enjoying listening to everyone here speak. So I'm looking forward to everyone's answers. I would just say very simply to an entrepreneur, come with a lot of confidence in your capabilities and what you are trying to achieve, but with zero ego, so that you're coachable and listening to the advice and the mentorship and the guidance that these experienced partners have to offer you.
Thank you. That's great. Mary, on mute. You're on mute.
So the coachability is really important. I think it's important to do your homework before you come. And part of that's research, and part of that is looking at your own heart and what you really want and knowing that about yourself.
Thank you. Great wisdom. Sally?
Yeah, I think staying laser focused too on your science and technology. What is your data? What are you trying to drive forward? And what is differentiating what you're working on versus what is in the competitive space? And keep your eye on that ball too as you move forward.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Daniela?
All of what has been said already, very, very valuable, very valid. I think I'll add to it and just say, look, and anyone on this panel and any sophisticated investor out there will probably be able to uncover gaps or issues or challenges. I think
transparency.
Be honest with those, be transparent, and you will find that probably you'll get a great partner who can help you navigate it.
Beautiful. Roy?
All of the above. And I will add to that, explain why you're solving a real market need. I mean, we see too many nice to have or technologies looking for a problem. So try to really articulate why you're solving something which is a pressing need to your customer, whoever that is, and why do you provide a solution that is unique and stands out compared to others.
Beautiful. Thank you. Johannes?
I don't know. I mean, we've heard a lot. I would just say to them, come join one of our communities. You'll be around peers. You'll be around investors. You'll be around potential strategic partners. And while you're pursuing your science, every scientific founder needs these added connections that will help them build a successful company. And so we welcome anybody to apply and join our community.
Brilliant. That's additive. Tom?
So I'm going to try to distill what I've heard and then add one nuance. I've heard beginner mind, know thyself, understand the competitive space, find focus for solutions that are for important problems. And the only thing I would add, it sort of amplifies on Johannes's comment. The world is an information font. How do you access it? You know, what is your way of make certain that as you're pitching, you have covered all of the avenues that are accessible to you, and then be open to every other avenue that you haven't considered.
Beautiful, beautiful. Jerome, you're closing this out. What's your thought?
So obviously not much left, although perhaps I would like to add one thing which we keep very central to in our team, and that's to paraphrase Denzel Washington, fail forward. Don't fail backwards, fail forward. Fail early, fail fast, but look where you're failing and address it. So I really love that one, and so that's what I would end with.
Brilliant, brilliant insights from each of you. I think if people listening and will listen, write each of these down, they have a much better sense of success. I want to invite all our listeners to stay tuned for the next webinar led by Dr. Ron Cohen. Ron is a member of the selection committee. I want to thank him for all his efforts. I want to acknowledge all of you. You're all outstanding. You're all outstanding. And hearing you today reinforced for me why we made as a committee such excellent decision in selecting each and every one of you for the Galien Incubator, Accelerator, and Private Equity Honor. Congratulations. Continue your expert work. I look forward to seeing you again and again. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.